Hi everyone, can you hear me? Let's see. Hi, this is Mariah. Can you guys hear me?
Hello, I think I made it.
You did. This is Mariah.
I was on earlier, but I guess I didn't put the pin in, so it wouldn't let me talk, so I had to redial.
Gotcha. It looks like Helena's on too, but I don't see she has audio. Unless. Helena, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I'm connected. You have the power of the mute button as the organizer.
Yeah, it's I forgot if you don't call and I have to unmute you. So sorry about that.
Uh-huh. That's okay. How you doing?
I'm okay. How are you guys doing?
All right. Yeah.
All right, Bretta and Allison, I see you guys are on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. Allison, you should be able to just start talking now. She texted me saying she needed to be unmuted.
Yeah, and she should be unmuted now.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I don't hear her, but you might.
Nope.
Nope. Let me see if she has microphone access on.
Oh, I think she's redialing in.
Oh, okay. Are you doing the camera?
I don't have mine on, but I can
Okay.
turn it
No,
on.
I was just wondering. Oh, I see. There you are.
It
I
is
see
kind of
Eric.
nice being able to have everyone see each other. But I'll leave it up to folks to decide what they want to do. And I can also share my screen, and anyone else can share their screen if they want to show documents and things like that.
Oops. What phone number can Renee call? Okay, let me tell her. 1. And when you call in, you need the PIN number, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm wondering, so I can't unmute. Oh, Allison's self-muted. So Allison, okay, you should be able to talk now.
I don't think they'll be able to talk if they didn't. Did they put that star or that 92 pound in? I don't think you can talk if you don't put that in.
I can copy and paste the PIN and information into the chat box.
Renee's going to call in.
Okay.
Brian said he might listen in the background if he's around.
Yep. Yeah, I know he had to run down to Hadley to get some things, and I don't know if he's back yet, but he did. I remember he said that as well. He'd log in if he could.
Hello,
Allison?
this is Renee.
Oh, hi, Renee.
Hi, who's this?
This is Mariah, and we've got
Okay,
a whole bunch of other people on here too.
okay.
She said that Allison said she can see and hear everybody, but that's it.
All right. Is she trying to use her phone to call in?
Uh, So Helena, sorry, this is only the second time that these guys have been on a virtual meeting, and it's only my third. So I think she is trying to use her phone.
Okay, so in the chat box, I just pasted the phone number to call and the panelist audio access code. So I don't know if those are the ones that she's using, but
Okay, let me.
I think that should work.
Is it the same as on the agenda?
I believe
Oh, I
so.
can open the chat box. Okay, hold on. Here it is. Okay, it is. So Renee can hear us. Now we're just working on Allison and Jeff. Oh, sorry, that was me. We'll see if it works. Did Eric mute himself?
I think so. All right, Allison and Jeff, can you?
Okay, can you hear?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Okay. But you don't see me, right?
No.
So if you see, there's like the box that has like all of the names in the chat and everything, and there should be on the side like a green circle that has a microphone, and underneath it there's a gray circle that has a movie camera. If you click the camera, it should turn green and it would have your webcam.
Yeah, so mine's not showing that, but that's okay. I don't have to be seen. I wanted to know if you could or not, so.
Okay.
So I see Bretta, I see Mariah, and the other lady, Helena. Is Eric here? And then I heard Renee.
Renee was here. She said she could hear us.
I'm still
Okay,
here.
okay, I hear Renee, and then I heard Eric, and he's here too.
I'm here. I was just on mute. No picture of me, though.
So we're all here except Jill then. All right.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for making this happen. And I am going to let you all know that it's being recorded and there will be a transcript at the end of this. And we'll eventually be posting these all to the town YouTube channel. And with that, I will let Bretta or Eric take it away. Oh, and who's taking minutes? Bretta, are you taking minutes?
Well, I guess I'm taking notes, yes. So
Okay.
I have the minutes. So this is our first meeting for the strategic planning with our consultant from FRCOG, Helena Farrell. Nice to see you again. And everyone, this is Helena.
Helena.
Helena, sorry. I know a lot of
That's okay.
Helenas, so, and they all spell their name differently, so I apologize.
That's okay.
Eric is the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, and right now he's muted. And the Allison, Jeff, Renee, and Jill, who's the only one who's not attending, are also commissioners. So Helena and Mariah and I had met about a month ago-ish to talk about the scope of services, which I did share with the commission members, and we are here to get started on the whole process. So I guess, Helena, if you could introduce to the commission what the scope of work is and what your vision for the plan is that FRCOG can help us with, that would help. This is our first time really delving into strategic planning formally.
Sure. Should I try and share my desktop? Because I have the scope of work open. I'm not sure.
So you should be a presenter now, and you should be able to share your screen.
There it is.
Okay, is it showing you?
Yep.
So you're seeing the scope of work
Mhm.
document?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
And
Okay.
I did email this to everybody separately as well, so.
Okay. So you want me to run through this quickly?
Sure, if people think that would help, do people think that would help?
I think it would.
It's not
just
long.
make sure we're on the same page.
Okay,
Right, to kind of set the context for this whole effort, right? That's what the scope of work does, is it's basically a contract between us, the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, and the town of Irving. It's a contract for the work that we'll do and for the deliverables that you'll receive. And let's see, it's the end of April 2020, and we will be building upon the current open space and recreation plan that the town did. I'm just going to show you this map. This is one of the maps that came out of the current open space and recreation plan, which is a separate planning document. It's a separate funding that pays for that, but it's a living document that produces recommendations and action items that are based on the input of the community that the town can then act upon. And so when you get a follow-up initiative such as this one that's outlined in the scope of work, it allows us to build upon what's already been done. So that's our starting point, is as you can see, it says tasks and deliverables. We'll be using the GIS maps from the 2018 Open Space and Rec Plan, and also continuing to work with the town and the relevant committees and boards to drill into some of the action items that were identified in the plan. So when I met with Mariah and Greta, we talked about some of the urgent needs that the town has, that the Recreation Commission has been working on, and trying to figure out a strategic plan for tackling that. So the scope of work outlines what the task would be to resolve some of those needs and address some of those goals, and what the deliverables would be. So the first step is to do an inventory and assessment of the community parks, playgrounds, and recreation areas in the town. So that would, we would basically take what's already been done in the OSRP and then do a more fine-grained community scale process to get into some of the details. And also, I saw that there's a new document where the Recreation Commission has already outlined some of the specific needs. So that would get incorporated into the deliverables. There's 2 working maps you can see here. One is in existing conditions, which shows all of the existing conditions, shows all of this data. So that includes town-owned parcels, flood zone areas, water resources, impervious surfaces, roads, farmland, schools, some land use data, and some natural heritage data from natural heritage and endangered species programs. So, and that's just like the typical suite of data that we put into our maps to understand what's happening on the landscape when we do planning. And then the second map would be a needs assessment, and this would integrate, what the Rec Commission and other town boards have been discussing. So this process in task 1 is, here's what we have and here's what we need, and then moving on, we would do the second task would be a stakeholder visioning workshop. And this would broaden the conversation to include other stakeholders in town, including the Council on Aging and other town residents and employees, to make sure we get a broad survey of who are the people who need to use these spaces. And that can be quite a fun and creative opportunity to get together. We have to figure out how we would do that. If we're going to do that, you know, this year, because this is a grant that's been the time frame of the grant is for 2020. So in the current context of coronavirus and social distancing, we kind of have to rethink how we do public group meetings.
Helena, I just want to make sure, because I believe I mentioned this to everyone, but I want to clarify. So this whole scope of work will be funded through DLTA funding, which FERCOG has for different, projects for municipalities, which is really awesome because it means that we get to do this without paying out of our pocket for it. So we really appreciate that from FERCOG. And we built this scope within that budget. And like Helena's saying, the time frame for that grant funding is until December.
That's right. Yep, so it's a $5,000 pot of money, and this scope of work outlines how we've divvied it up for the 3 tasks and the amount of time that the money allows for staff to work on the deliverables. So, for me to make these maps for task 1, I'm estimating it would be, 30 hours, and that's including some, emailing and like this, conversation and other conversations. So that all gets wrapped into the budget for task 1, and then the same thing for task 2 and task 3. And in the end, it ends up just being $5,000 for the total. So it's good. It's definitely a great thing that that Mariah, that you initiated this, especially because of what's happened with the coronavirus and states having to spend so much money on mitigation of this public health emergency. And DLTA is something that when the state has that funding available, it will make it available to municipalities. And I think it's a big concern moving forward, if like what the fiscal situation of the state is going to be on the other side of coronavirus. So I'm, something we could be glad that this is already like in play and it's not going to be taken away. And
yeah, we got very lucky with that.
yeah. So so essentially, like task 1 is to do some initial mapping to get a sense of the lay of the land and what the needs are. Task 2 is then to have that stakeholder visioning workshop in Irving, and we may need to do this remotely. And then that allows, like I said, it allows for a broader conversation and creative thinking. These can be really fun. Typically we have maps and people get to interact and put ideas down on paper with markers and stuff. And, we'll see how it works out if we have to do it remotely. I mean, thankfully we have some time, and maybe by the fall it'll be possible to do this in person. So we might actually need to adjust the timelines depending on, depending on how things happen with the public health condition. But then the third task is to create a phased park plan, which is responding to the priority park areas that are identified in the visioning workshop. And this allows the town to integrate. So we take all of the work that the Recreation Commission has done, and integrate that with other stakeholder goals and then other considerations that the Recreation Commission might need support with, like addressing stormwater or addressing right-of-way issues or addressing adjacency issues that's something that the FERCog can address. So that's kind of the big idea here. And it's, I'll just say in order to like discuss or touch upon the difference between what this DLTA planning effort does versus the OSRP is it's a much more strategic and targeted fine-grained approach where like we take the big picture priorities from the OSRP and then we're kind of zooming in and doing some targeted planning in order to get some things done in more of a short term, rather than the OSRP is like it has a 7-year lifespan and some of the goals can be long term. So this is like cleaving off a small piece of that and having support with a targeted plan.
I think that this will also dovetail with a lot of the capital planning that Bretta has been, working on. Right now, we're kind of in the middle of or I guess the end of the budgeting, but I think that if we can think about that as Helen, I believe we told you we're thinking about, putting in a new playground at our Park Street Park as we think about in the future what we want to do with vets.
Which is kind of adjacent.
Right. So like this will give us sort of a goal and task list that we can then work from so that each season we aren't starting from scratch saying, what did we talk about doing again? What are our goals? It'll kind of lay everything out a few years in advance so that we just know, all right, the next thing we need to work on is this.
Right. Were there any questions about the scope of work from the Recreation Committee or the other people in the meeting?
I just have, I guess, a comment. So the part of it where we're going to get public opinion and from stakeholders, and we generally don't get a lot of involvement from people in the town. I mean, only unless something's going wrong. So like we had done a Facebook poll several years ago for something, and I think we might have had 40 people respond. So I don't know what you would expect from that. You're not, I don't know how much trouble it is to try to, showcase this huge event and then not have any turnout. That is typically what happens when we do things like that. So just keep that in mind that, maybe we offer some way for people to interact or contact, but I guess I wouldn't waste too much brain power or effort on it because it's probably not going to happen. Sorry, just a little pessimistic after all these years.
Yeah, I think that we should keep that in mind, and we can also, try to incorporate, new voices. And, one thing that might come out of coronavirus right now is that come time when we are allowed to, be near each other and interacting more, people might come to more things like this to feel a sense of community. So this might be something that, depending on the circumstances, whether it's held online or in person, I think that, I hope that maybe people will come together in an effort to, feel that sense of community. But I also recognize that, you guys have that history of knowing what has happened in the past.
Right.
Right. I think that's a reality that a lot of our towns in Franklin County deal with, and it's hard to engage people. It's something that even with the capacity and the experience that we have at FERCog, we always feel like we want to be doing more and doing better with stakeholder engagement. So I think it's just something we need to keep working at, and I think it certainly will be interesting to see how, this pandemic changes things. I mean, we've got more people who are home not when they're not busy working, and working is probably one of the number one reasons why people can't participate in democratic processes like this one, is because they're busy at work. And we do a lot of our planning during business hours. We do a lot of it at night so that people can participate when they work full time. But yeah, it's a hard balance. And I mean, everything's been turned upside down in this current situation, but maybe that'll work out to our advantage. We have no idea. But we certainly want to reach as many people as we can, and continue to advocate for a democratic process.
Yeah. My other hope is that with Bretta and I's positions, that there will be some consistency there, and hopefully people will feel like they can come to one or both of us with input, even if they can't make it to a meeting. They can at least either call or email their input, and we can then bring it up at a meeting. I know that before we left town hall, I had some people who were coming in talking about the Irving Center visioning process, which was really awesome, that folks would just stop in when they had time and talk about it.
And I also think that there's also the challenge of working electronically right now for a lot of people, and people are less familiar with it, or don't. Different generations of people understand and have different levels of comfort using technology, and that was true before the virus and before the sort of quarantine period. And I think that knowing that people didn't necessarily respond ridiculously well to the Facebook survey, maybe we come at it from a multi-tonged approach, and not just working with already existing community groups and town commissions, but also maybe we do something on paper, knowing that we're not going to get a lot of electronic activity from past experience.
Yeah.
I mean, we have done multiple on paper and maybe got 20, 30 people out of, what, 1,800 that we've surveyed.
Yeah.
Right. I think
that
it's the same people every time that would respond. So I mean, that's fine. We need to do it just because that's the way it needs to be done. But I just don't think, I don't know. I guess a lot of effort shouldn't be made for something like, that part of it. I would rather, time and money be spent elsewhere.
Yeah, it's not a lot of effort. I mean, we basically pick a day and a place, or, if we're not picking a place, we're picking, are we doing it by Zoom or are we doing it by GoToMeeting?
Right. Yeah.
It's not, and then we make a little flyer and send out an announcement. So it's not like we're knocking on people's door and doing like this massive, expensive, the money for this grant is going into, analysis and assessment, and then information synthesis that, we're building on what's already been written and documented, and just trying to get organized and identify the path forward.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what's next?
Next is well, I sort of made up this agenda out of the blue. I was thinking, okay, what are we going to be talking about? So now I have strategic planning goals and a 5-year focus, which I think is just sort of an overview of what kinds of things we'd be looking at, and the idea of a 5-year focus using maybe the example that Mariah sent from the town of Montague for their Parks and Rec department strategic planning thing here that I emailed
did
around.
Folks have a chance to look at that?
I was able to earlier today.
What was that?
Yes, I looked at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I found that really helpful to look at, to kind of wrap my head around what a final product of this would look like. and especially a neighboring community.
And the way that they broke it out, it looks like they really prioritize things based on current use and which parks get the most use and which programming areas were their priority that they already have and that they wanted to keep going. Hey, they have a sand volleyball court. I did not know that at Unity Park. So maybe I'll start talking to John about that, figure out how they installed it. So they have that, and then you can see that some of the parks, when you're looking through this, like Norma's Park, which is on Lake Pleasant Road itself, it's that sort of abandoned one that nobody uses and they have it blocked off. That one is not at all used, so they have no plans for the next 5 years or 10 years even for that. So it's almost like, I mean, they're a much bigger geographic area than us, I think. Maybe we're bigger, I don't know. But residential area, but it looks like that they went through and did all this, and they looked at the use, looked at what they had, and then came up with a sort of a plan for where to focus their efforts for the next several years. And that's kind of, I think, what we were hoping to get out of this is, what do we have? What are our priorities? How do we work for the best needs of the town? And what are we looking at both 10 years ahead, but more importantly for us, just even getting a 5-year plan in place for anything would be great for the town parks. So.
Did you send that to me, Bretta?
The what?
That document that you're referring to, did you send that to me? Because I'm actually thinking I'm looking at something else, the Park Street Park scenarios, and then the open space and rec plan.
So this is one that I just sent with all the other documents, and Mariah sent it like, what, 2 days ago? A day ago?
Yeah, I don't know if Helena was on that when I sent it.
I just resent it to everybody I knew who was attending earlier today, like around 1 o'clock-ish.
Yeah, I don't have that.
I only see, let's see.
Did I not attach this?
I don't have that one.
I see 4 attachments.
Okay, nope. So it would be in yours, Mariah.
Okay, I will see if I can pull that up.
Yeah, this is what I got, which is Park Street Park scenarios, the agenda for the meeting today, and then the OSRP outline, and then the scope of work that we just looked at.
So it was a different one. I'll send that to you, Helena.
Yeah, send it to me. So that sounds like it sounds like you're saying that is what you are hoping to get out of this process.
Well, something really, I mean, even something like this, yes, something like that would help. So let me see if I can find.
That's really great for me to have. Does it have mapping, and does mapping feel like really useful, or do you more just want a to-do list?
It does not have mapping. I think I don't know. Does because I can't remember now. Does the OSRP already have identified out in it areas that are of particular environmental concern? Because I don't think any of our parks fall into that.
The OSRP does a very detailed inventory of environmental conditions.
Okay.
There's a whole chapter on environment, which is vegetative habitat, water resources habitat, watersheds, soils, landscape. It's a lot of detail, but it's not like currently what the needs assessment is. It's
And I
really
don't,
like
I don't I don't actually think that any of our parks fall into those areas. So when we're looking at just the parks, I mean, apart from possibly Usher, which would have already been outlined, I don't think that any of our parks fell into any of the areas that were mapped out within the flood zones or anything like that. So I don't know if that's going to really be relevant for us.
Right. I
mean-
mean, what distinguishes this process from the OSRP is the strict focus on here and now and moving forward.
Okay.
You know, an OSRP is a comprehensive and rigorous and detailed inventory of the whole town and even the region, and that allows for a lot of flexibility in thinking of like regional scale initiatives and out of the box projects and like integrative stuff. But what this process is that we're talking about today is very targeted and specific.
Okay.
And so I totally get what you're saying and agree that, like, you know, we wouldn't need to repeat that data inventory for this process. However, there is some mapping that could be really useful, just for talking about, you know, during the stakeholder visioning process. Like, you know, let's say we have a map of that field, and that allows participants to say, oh, here's where I really like to go with my toddler on the weekend, or, you know, here's where all the teams like to hang out because there's this private area that's separate from the road. And, you know, you can use maps in that way to get people to look at the site and to share their knowledge. And then that would then translate into like, okay, we obviously need a bunch of benches over here, or we need a surface over here where this kind of activity is gonna work. So, you know, it's not gonna be like a natural resources inventory as much as mapping that would allow for like the design, setting the stage for a design of the site.
Oh, okay. All right. Then that makes more sense. Yes. So yes, mapping, and I just emailed you the document.
Okay.
Good. And I can also email you some photographs. Did everybody see the photographs that I took of? Okay. All right. I'll email you those photographs too, so you don't have to drive over to Lake Pleasant, Helena.
Yeah, thank you for those, Bretta. Helena, so I had sent out about how Rudders Park in Lake Pleasant is pretty similar in some ways to Park Street Park. It's pretty small, and it was very plain before they recently did all of the construction over there. And we've been looking at that kind of as an example to see what do we like and don't like. And I don't know if people have opinions that they want to voice about that.
It's a very small park. And it's a different type of community than we are too. So it's a very small local use park as opposed to
Dense.
yes.
Which one is it again?
It's off the beaten track. It's towards the Bridge of Names in Lake Pleasant.
It's brand new. They just built it with CDBG money. And prior to that, it was very similar to Park Street, where it had like one set and a metal slide. And now it has like a little bit of a field area, very small, like kind of just like grass area. What was that?
It's not a usable grass area. The entire thing is totally built up. So
there is on the end.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's not a lot, but and then there's 2 play structures, a pavilion with electricity, and a 2-bay swing set.
Norma's Park, is that what you're talking about?
No, it's Rudders, Rutters.
Oh, Rudders.
And
Normal-
this was put together before so you can see they had construction phase 1 in FY20.
Okay. So this is more of a deliverable that you would like to have, would be something that translates directly into like construction planning according to fiscal year.
Well, ultimately, that's where we would like to get with things. If we do something that's more of an interim until we can get to here, or that allows us to look at this, that would be great. Or to look forward to something like this, that would get us to the point where we could start to look at developing up a comprehensive 5-year to 10-year plan for all the parks.
Okay.
Because we're also looking at Vets Field very closely as probably our priority after Park Street for the next several years. But we don't want to move ahead with that until we have a vision for everything.
Right. I think that the kind of the order that I imagine this would go in is talking about what type of park we want each park to be, kind of who we want it to serve, and maybe what amenities we think it'll have, and then working backwards from that, figuring out which fiscal years we need to do which, whether it's capital projects or just time spent or different investments, breaking down, okay, we want to serve this population with these amenities, and what year do we do that, in what order? If we know we have to replace something at a park, when do we plan on doing that? And I don't know, maybe everyone else has other ideas too of what they would like this document to include, but I know for me, that would be helpful to see from the Recreation Commission to know on my end how I can assist in planning those projects.
Same here. I mean, the scope of work that I drafted up is not, it's just a draft, and we can adjust that. It sounds like it needs to be adjusted slightly to be less graphic and less community engagement / visioning process, and more strategic thinking and planning, and actually like getting into the nitty-gritty of order of operations. I mean, there's some visioning that needs to happen at the beginning, and also getting everybody onto the same page, but then critical thinking about implementation across all of the parks. And originally I had Park Street Park and Vets Field, but there's a few other key public spaces that you want to have addressed as well.
Yeah, I think I'd like to include all of the public spaces, but we just know that those are the first two that we'll be working on.
Okay.
And in terms of the scope, I think that, we still need to do all 3 of those steps, but I think that there might be kind of an intermediary step. So like kind of we do the inventory, and maybe that is less intense than we thought it was. And then there's a step that is doing some of this critical thinking after that. And then when we do the stakeholder visioning, maybe we already have something that Recreation Commission is able to bring to that to get feedback on, rather than starting from nothing. And then there is the final product of the phase park plan, which is set up like the document similar to Montague's. That's how I imagine it.
Any Rec Commission folks have thoughts? Because we've all discussed some of this before, the 3 of us.
Right. I agree that we're looking at it like we want to get a park up. We want to get these things done. And, we've had a lot of town input. We've had, whatever the thing that went out, the Open space, thank you. That gave us some direction. People want walking trails, so we know those things. We have 3 parks, with play structures and things that's kind of where our focus is, because we took one down. Now we're down to 1, I guess, Alinsky now. Or no, Park Street Park is still up, right? Or
No,
whatever's there, I
Park
guess. But
Street up. Park Street is up, but the slide's unsafe right now, I think. And we're going to be putting mulch under. We're going to be looking at putting mulch and getting Church Street Park up, but we have nothing on the Irving side of town.
okay. So, I mean, I guess, I'm looking at it like that. Like, we kind of know what we want to do. What steps do we need to take to make those things happen? In 5 years, if we're working on a 5-year plan, how much of that can we get done in 5 years? So I guess, to me, a lot of the ideas of what we're doing, we kind of have that all thought out. We kind of know what, the town wants, and what we want. So I guess I'm kind of ready to, let's go to the next step,
I know the town has been asking us for a sort of a written plan, I think, in a written vision, so that we have it traced out, so that there's some consistency. For example, if there's a change in leadership in the Parks and Rec department, or looking forward or back, is there something that we can have that we can hand them, that they can say, okay, this is what you're doing? They're asking us for some sort of a written plan that shows that this is strategically thought about, which is where I think the document this document from Montague, I feel that's more of what they're looking for in a way. So maybe just how do we formalize this? How do we put all of our things in a row? Because the commission has all these great ideas and plans in their head, but it's hard to find something that stepped out in those 5 years for every single park that encompasses maintenance and planning. And so I think that that's some of what we need to also look at with this project, this focus. So, but yeah, Allison's right. There's a lot of ideas in people's heads. So
Well, I think so. It sounds like Mariah and Bretta, and if the rec committee could also just confirm that they like the Montague strategic plan as a case study. Is everybody kind of on board with this as like a case study example that we would follow?
Jeff and I say yes.
Okay. I would.
Renee,
looking at
Eric,
my,
you there?
Yeah, I say yes too.
No, I agree. I agree with Allison, and I feel that we've gone through a lot of the planning process and thoughts and ideas and visions. We just really need to come up with a concrete plan that the finance committee was looking for to say, what's our 2020, 21, 22, 23, 25 plan? Which park, what time, what step, what phase? We really need to get that down so they can see, how to approach it for a, fiscal year budget.
Right.
and I do think that if we're looking at the open space plan goals, which I had somewhere in front of me, but it's under something. One of the things was to work with more of the other committees that represent different populations or different interests that would be different stakeholders, or could speak for stakeholders in the community as we look at each of the parks, such as Vetsfield. If we could actually plan that in, then that would be the community angle, the community input angle, and the outreach to stakeholders. Maybe getting some input as we move forward with some of the plans, so that they feel more invested in the plans that are moving forward, and more participatory, and B, to make sure that nothing has changed, especially since we're all going to be looking at a sort of a different way of moving about society after all this. So sort of back checking ourselves each step that we take. How do we, before we move ahead with Vets Field, how do we get community input before we move ahead with Zelensky or what have you? How do we mesh that up with what might be changing needs across the community from year to year?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from the rec committee and again from Mariah and Bretta, if you want to just, you know, popcorn style, like suggest what is the best way to get the input. And it sounds like some strategies have been tried, and you've learned from what you've tried and in the past, and maybe want to do things differently. And then we have this, you know, the complication of the social distancing, and we can't really just put up a big map in town hall and invite people to interact with the map, because you'd have to spray it down with bleach in between each person. So I don't know. I'd love to hear your ideas, and that can inform me about, like, well, what map making I can do to support that piece of getting that community input.
I have a really good idea. Let's make up a plan and say this is what we're going to do and put it out, and then we'll get tons of feedback about all the things that we shouldn't be doing. So let's just this is what we're doing, and then we'll get some feedback.
Yeah, and definitely putting something out there is a great way to prompt people to just respond and say, here's where we are. If you don't like it, let us know and we'll revise. So that could be also a really efficient way. We could start with just making sure we get all the work that's been done onto a piece of paper and then edit as necessary. You know, that would be strategic and efficient, instead of doing the, you know, more robust social engagement, you know, stuff that's like just not going to work in the context of coronavirus anyway.
I really like that idea, Allison. And I know it's a little bit silly, but like, I think people do have trouble using their imagination sometimes. So if you give them something to work with, you know, it helps.
Right, like if we had sort of here's what we're looking at doing, you know, if you have any input, email us at blah, blah, blah. And I think anyone who disagrees is probably going to be the first to, you know, do something, you know?
So what that could look like would be a written document like what I have shared on the screen, which is the Montague case study, where we're integrating the rec commission's ideas into this final deliverable template that the town needs, and doing the thinking about the timeline. And then, you know, to reverse engineer a community engagement document, I would try and add the call out from that, you know, final document to a map that's like, okay, this is where that thing is, and we said we were going to do that thing, and tell us what you think. You know, how about that?
Yes, I like that.
I think that's a good idea.
I do too.
Okay.
And that map
All
could
right,
go
well,
out. The map could go out on paper, and it can go out digitally. And then
you could put it on Facebook.
Letter, then people can mail in suggestions or email or call. I'll be fielding a lot of calls. But we could do it that way easily with a visual.
Yeah, Helena, we also have something called the Around Town, which is a newsletter that gets mailed to every household in town. And so we could, I don't think we would include the whole thing, but we could include, you know, a quick summary of it or something and direct people to go online to see it in full or something like that.
Great. So I would just need a list of all of the public spaces in town that you want me to, you know, I'll basically take the whole town and I'll do like a Zoom in call out like this little call out here that says, here's this park and here's the ideas that are being suggested. And it would be like a line that's like swing set, and then a line that's pointing to like, you know, whatever you all are thinking about. And so we would get it into, and to get all of the public places into like one document, I would probably do a series of like zoom ins on the different public places with the different ideas. So, I mean, would it be like 8 or 9 or 2 or 3 or?
I would say that we have 3 parks that really don't need any work beyond some ADA compliance as far as mulch, like as far as Church Street, Walensky. Those parks could just be on the map, but the main focus would be Park Street and Veterans, I feel. I mean, we've come up with some plans on both of them. You know, Veterans is more of a sports-related field with the tennis courts and basketball and a smaller scale, younger kids playground area and swings, where Park Street's more of a multi-age group park, as the commission sees. I don't think we need to go as such a large scope with every single park. Just mainly I feel we're focused on Park Street and Veterans Field. I don't know how the rest of the group feels.
I agree with you, Eric.
Okay. I mean, that makes my job easier. It's also possible, you know, this is really the nice thing about this case study that Bretta's provided us with, is that it really is efficient. It's like 2 paragraphs just saying, here's the site, Highland Park. Here's the current status, 2 paragraphs, really brief. And, you know, if things have already been figured out, you just list, like, here's what we've done, move on. And then it still allows you to, you know, it still allows this to be like a full inventory, even if there's no action or recommended steps to be taken. So this format would allow us to still capture that, but then we can dedicate the brain power of the brainstorming on Park Street Park and Vets Field.
I also
How does that
think,
sound?
I think that having a sort of an inventory of what already exists in other parks will also help the vision, the public, to get more of a sense of how Vets and Park Street fit in with the other parks, so that we're not having them say, well, we have a baseball field over in the center of town, we need one over at Vets Field, or we have a soccer field over there. Now, why isn't there a soccer field in Vets Field? Well, because there's one over on the other side of town. Or if we're going to move the soccer field over to Vets Field, if that's one of our end thoughts, then what's going to happen over at Zielinski? Well, that becomes the baseball and softball focus or something. So it'll give a broader context for any possible ideas of changes in the park and the designs in the park.
Yeah, I think ultimately we want that document to have a snapshot summary of what each park currently has, a quick blurb on what direction we want that park to head, and then maybe like a listed inventory of the facilities and amenities that park has, just bullet points, and then the fiscal year breakdown of tasks. Does that sound right to everybody? Like, those are kind of the pieces that we want to see in this to make it easy to compare and contrast what each park has, as well as the tasks to move forward.
I agree. I think that would be really easy for people to understand and read and compare them. I think that's a good idea, Bretta.
What about also including a section under, like, you know, there's the current status, there's the amenities that are bulleted, and then here's the needs assessment.
Yeah,
so you're listing like these are the identified needs that we've discussed and have decided are complementary across the town.
Agreed.
So we could add that to this format and but then keep the 5-year and 10-year plan action items. So I can actually, I can make some adjustments to the scope of work to make it reflect this conversation and the final deliverable that will look more like this Montague strategic plan case study.
That would be great. And what are our next steps in terms of actually starting this? So should we schedule another meeting for you all to start? Like maybe Helena, you can come up with the template to fill in, and we'll give you, Bretta can send you over a list of all of the public spaces that we want to be included in here. And then you guys can have another meeting, fill in that template as best we can. And then there would be the public meeting where we would get input on that once it's, drafted. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, in all of this, we're looking at moving forward with Park Street Park. And that would probably be moved, we would start on that before we're going ahead, before this process with Helena, with you, would be complete. So I guess I can give you information on Park Street Park or Mariah can, as we're moving forward with that and that gets updated, because that's going to be the one park that might shift a little depending on what we get in terms of a budget and financial support and what equipment can go in there. But it's mainly a multi-age playground focus space. So, but that's the one part that I can see shifting, because I think that the commission wants to get moving ahead on that so that there's a play area on the Irving side of town for residents there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, go ahead. In terms of scheduling, do we want to schedule the next meeting now while we have everyone, and then we can let Helena go and talk about Park Street and kind of make some decisions on moving forward with that? Or Helena, do you want to stick around? Is that going to be helpful for you? I'm not sure.
Do you feel like you need my help or like any of my input on what's happening with Park Street? Is it something that's kind of already been figured out and you don't need any consultation on that?
Well, I feel like at this point we're at the point where I think we know kind of what we want in that park, or the commission does. It's a matter of finding what we can do with funding. So at this point we're looking at a funding schedule. So yeah.
Yeah, if you have ideas on grants that we can apply for.
Yeah, and again, a lot of that information is going to be documented in the OSRP generally, because usually when the goals are identified in the action plan of the OSRP, there's a table. It's section 8 or 9 where there's an action plan table, and then usually the potential grants have been identified there.
Okay.
So it's definitely worth checking. But I can yeah, I think we should pick a time to discuss again.
For fleshing out a draft.
Yeah, I'll have to do some thinking about how to put together a draft and see if we have a template that I should start with, or if I start from scratch. So it would be good to have a couple of weeks to work on that and then send it to you, and then you'll have some time to work on it, and then we meet. So maybe the end of May, beginning of June.
Do you guys usually have your meeting, the last Sunday of every month? Is that what you guys were doing before?
That's
Yeah,
what we
I
were,
think we're more flexible now. So
I mean,
well,
it's
let's hope that we're back to normal by then. So yeah, we usually do Sundays. But it's generally because our kids all have sports during the week, but we know we won't have that. So I don't know. Probably any weeknight. Tuesdays don't work for me. Is there any night that doesn't work for anyone specifically?
I know that before you were saying that that Fridays and Wednesdays and Fridays were the best days.
I think that's because Jill was working Tuesdays and Thursdays, but she's not anymore. So
Okay. So it could really be any day after 4.
I think so. And Jeff has do you still have your assessor meetings or not?
On Mondays.
So Jeff.
Well, not now, but.
So you're fine then, any weeknight?
I guess.
Okay, so I think any night but Tuesday. Tuesday night I have something going on.
So May 20,
Maybe
the last week of May, some point. Pick a day of the week.
How about Friday, or how about the first week of June? I've got a daughter with a birthday the last week of May, and I have to figure out how to have a birthday party for a kid in this social distancing.
I know, like the Wednesday, because on my calendar my daughter graduates on the 5th. Who knows if that's going to happen, but we'll see.
Well, how about Wednesday the 3rd?
Okay.
That seems like a good day for me.
Helena, are you going to be working on the maps between now and then?
Well, what I would do, based on what I've heard from the meeting today, is zoom in. I would create really quick, simple maps of the public spaces that you want to think about with the community. So
would it be worth identifying on a map things that aren't under our purview but which would fall under major recreational areas like Farley Ledges and basically like hiking trails, the M&M Trail, because that's right in the center of town, or geographical center kind of, where there's no parks.
Well, if you want to plan projects, then we should address that. Like if you want it to go into this final deliverable, then yes, but otherwise it's been addressed in the OSRP. The OSRP really, covers the more like regional linkages and multimodal different kinds of recreational uses, whereas it sounds like this plan needs to focus more on like what does the town need to spend money on and when do they need to do it, and it's more of like the urban. My sense is that it was more of like the urban public spaces that need capital improvements.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So we'll skip then my thought, because I was just thinking, do we want to include that so people could get a sense of where different activities are placed across town? But that's okay. If we're just focusing on parks.
we can describe that in whatever, when we put something out to the community, we can say, you know, this builds upon the OSRP, which does a town-wide inventory that fits within a regional context and addresses multiple forms of recreation, skiing, hiking, climbing, walking, you know, and say, so that people understand the purpose of this effort, that this is focused, you know, basically what I just said, which is this is focused on like capital improvements for more central town public spaces.
Okay.
So hopefully they'll read it and then they'll understand, you know, what the purpose of this effort is, and hopefully they'll, you know, cooperate with the intention.
The open space recreation plan also has a map at the very end that has a lot of the other kind of recreation areas on it, like Hermit's Cave and the Farley Ledges and the river. So we
Yeah.
when we're presenting it, we could always include that map too.
Yeah, and include a link to the OSRP on the town's website.
Sorry, that's my cat. One of
Or
many.
wherever it is.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the date that was decided on? The 6th May, or sorry, the
I had suggested Wednesday, June 3rd.
at what time?
What time do people like? Does 4 o'clock work again?
I'm fine with 4, but I'm flexible. It doesn't matter.
After Judge Judy.
Jeff said after Judge Judy.
I don't
Right,
know
you're
what time
cutting into our Judge
is.
Judy town.
When does
Renee.
Judge Judy, when is that over?
Oh no, we're kidding. We can miss it. We're not that old yet.
All right. So Wednesday, May 3rd at 4.
Sure.
Does that work for Eric and Henry?
June 3rd. June 3rd.
Sure.
Or we could do 3
Sorry.
to 5.
4 o'clock's fine.
4 o'clock.
Okay.
So Renee said 4. All right. Okay, so June 3rd at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Helena.
All right, and
just be in
yeah,
touch
so-
with me for whatever you need.
yeah, well, I'll make some tweaks to the scope and send it back to you. And I don't know if we need like official sign off on this, but at some point we agree like this is what we're doing, and then that becomes our contract for the year. So I'll update that, and really appreciate that the Rec Commission was able to be here and offer that, and we'll take it from here.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Bye. Happy weekend,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So Park Street Park.
Mhm.
Bretta, you and I had kind of talked about so everyone had kind of worked on the upgrade possibilities kind of cheat sheet that I think you all put together. And then it became apparent when Bretta and I were talking that we had kind of missed some sketches that Cindy Mack, the playground designer, had sent over. And so I was wondering if you guys could all look at those tonight and just see if it changes, like see if there's anything that you really like on those that you wanted to add or change or use as inspiration before I
need-
over that
And I
Tuesday.
need to mail those out, Mariah. So you sent those to me, but I haven't yet sent them because I didn't want to confuse our meeting too
I
much.
can also show them right now if we want to get first impressions.
Okay.
I can try to pull those up. Let's see.
And these were sketches that were initially for Vets Field, which Cindy originally was looking at as the multi-age park playground.
Right. So they're not totally paired up with which park is which, but
it's an idea.
yes, and they had budgets with them, which is why I thought that it was important to look at. Okay, I can share my screen. All right, can you guys see this?
Yep.
All right. So this was Park Street Park that we had was this the one that you guys hadn't seen, or?
We saw it, but we didn't really look at it very close. We looked more at the one that was for, I
The big
guess,
for
first
vets.
responders and the vets, yeah, with the
Okay.
eagle and everything.
So there was a few other ones. So this one was for Park Street, and again, this was before we you guys had made the decision that we wanted Park Street to be more of the main playground. But this budgeted out to be, let's see. My
And
computer.
this was with wood mulch. The budget was including the wood mulch,
Right.
which I think we wanted to stay away from. But
yeah, so this had the wood fiber, but this total cost was 66,000, I think. That's what it looks like. So that's not including construction.
And it did not include like a climbing structure or anything for older kids. It has like monkey bars kind of thing for older kids and the ropes, but it doesn't have a slide. The two structures that look like a house and a tree are geared more for younger kids.
Right. And then there was some for vets. My computer is like overheating. Let's see.
The mini city, was that one of them or was it a different one?
I think it was different. I'm not sure. You don't have them handy, do you, Bretta?
Let me see what I can find.
Oh, I think these are them. There we go.
Did you find it?
Yeah. So these are not the like big themed custom ones. This was like it's an American themed one, but it wasn't with the big fire truck or anything. It has kind of a smaller one. But this has a pretty big climbing structure, a 4-bay swing set. This is like one of those web crawly things. And then a smaller play structure, which would be for younger kids.
And some sort of rocking log. I think we did look at this, Jeff. I think that Jeff and Jill and I all looked at these when we were talking about the other plans. We looked at this one, this particular one, yes. But just looked at it and then we got an idea of what other things were around. So the plans that we came up with when we were looking through the catalogs focused on 2 big play structures. These have more disparate units that are sort of spread around.
Right. So I think did Allison and Jeff leave, it looks like?
They may have.
Okay. So I think we're gonna have to call off our meeting then because we don't have a quorum, right?
Yeah, we have just Renee and Eric.
Yeah, but if people want to, Bretta, if you want to send these out and folks can just look through this, I think that would be good. And if I want to make sure that we have a pretty solid idea of what we want before I ask Cindy to do any more drawings, because she did do 6 drawings for us, not paid. And so I just want to be, conscientious of her time, especially right now when, the economy is kind of, all over the place. Just that we're being clear with her so that we do have a direction that we can go and we can start figuring out pricing, not just for the equipment, but for construction. If we have to wait for grant funding, this could push it back until next spring. So I think we need to figure out whether we're going to work within the $150,000 that we have allotted, or if we're going to be applying for funding. I think if we start this project this year, it won't be until probably late summer, early fall. And I don't think we'll get grant funding between now and then. Most of it doesn't work that quickly.
And there is in our revolving account, because we didn't have baseball this year, we do have some funds in there, maybe about 15,000 that we could use on this if we're going to be doing the banners for the grads. That's going to eat up some of that, but there'd be about 15,000 left. And Eric and Renee, we have to figure out from Jeff looking at the electrical budget for what's left to do, because there's still, I think, 29,000 left in that account for Usher, and I know not all the work is done there. So we would have to look at what needs to be done still and what actually might be the cost for that now that we've gotten partway through it. And to see if some of those funds could be reallocated towards Park Street, perhaps, or other things.
Yeah. Okie doke. So those are our next steps. You guys should take a look at that and get back to me, and then I can move forward with Cindy. And we can figure out the funding. Sound
Does that
good?
sound good?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I know we're all still getting used to the different platforms and everything, but I really appreciate that you're all willing to meet through this.
Thank you, everyone.
No problem. Thanks for your time.
So should we
Thank
call
you.
the meeting at 5:25?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. Now, Mariah, you have this recorded and you're going to do the rendering or whatever they call it.
Yeah, so right now it just gets saved onto our computers, and then eventually we'll put them onto the YouTube channel.
Okay. Do I know where what?
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.